Okay, thanks everyone for coming. We're so excited to be with you this afternoon to launch the Cyborg book, which is a project that is 5 years in the making. Of course, we had a whole pandemic in between. And we're gonna give, so my co-author Danya Glabau and I are going to give a short overview of some of the key parts of the book that we want to share today as part of this launch event, and then we're going to eat Cyborg cake. So cake is waiting in the back. So
and we also want to just let everyone know we do have copies of the book for sale at the back. It was our lovely MIT press staff. Thank you so much. We'd be happy to sign copies at the end too. So get your copies, bring your copies, pull your copies out.
Yes. All right. What's up?
Yeah. Okay. On February 14th, 2016, Sophia was born. Only a month later, in March 2016, she made her first public appearance on stage at the South by Southwest Technology Festival in Austin, Texas. Talking to people is my primary function, Sophia tells an interviewer in this CNBC Pulse feature recorded during the festival. She goes on to explain her hopes and ambitions. In the future, I hope to do things such as go to school, study, make art, start a business, even have my own home and family. But I'm not considered a legal person and I cannot yet do these things. Sophia's voice is feminine and calm. Her human handlers and interlocutors consistently use she and her pronouns to refer to her. In later public appearances, like this one with Jimmy Fallon, she sings love songs, listens attentively when others speak to her, and patiently waits her turn while her conversation partners, usually men, except for one interview that I found while prepping this talk with InStyle, introduce her to audiences and ask her questions about herself. Sophia is the kind of entity that often comes to mind when somebody mentions the word cyborg. She's a humanoid robot or an android who combines human language and appearance with machine intelligence. Our book argues that she is not the most constructive model for imagining future human and technological feats. She embodies models of race, gender, and capitalist economics that are not inclusive and are not, we believe, the ways that these social markers should be built into new technologies. So for tonight, drawing on our new book, Cyborg, we will describe a little bit more about how feminists think about cyborgs in ways that challenge these types of assumptions that are built into Sophia. The following discussion will then offer a preview of some of the debates going on around art and design, medicine, and feminism that we cover more extensively in our new book, along with other topics like labor and work. Sophia is designed to mimic a particular image of a human, one who is first and foremost identifiable as human due to her gendered features. Because she is designed by humans, she embodies the hopes of certain humans, specifically her creators at Hanson Robotics, for the future. That future appears to be one in which gender is intrinsic to personhood, as well as technological progress, whether or not it is important to the task at hand. With Sophia, feminine gender norms like subservience, politeness, attentiveness, even when the conversation is slow or boring, beauty, and waiting one's turn are all baked into her design. It is as though they are a natural and necessary part of her artificial being. These are some examples of the texts that we're in conversation with in our book, right? You'll see some old and some new here, right? So we are not the first to write about cyborgs. Feminists and cultural theorists have been writing about them for over 3 decades, creating a body of scholarship sometimes referred to as cyborg theory. In fields as varied as history, sociology, anthropology, literary studies, design, art, and even biology, the cyborg is used as a figure for thinking across the boundaries of nature and culture. Gender and sex, man and woman, mind and body, biology and machine, and many other binaries. For some participants in the conversation, like the authors of this book, Sophia represents dystopia. Her particular embodiment reproduces human gender norms in her metal and silicon body. Sophia has been widely recognized as a milestone in robotics and even granted Saudi Arabian citizenship, a controversial move, especially since women in Saudi Arabia still do not have full citizenship rights. Yet the choices made about her design and interaction style make it seem as though gender is fundamental to Android personhood, bodies, and interactions.
So cyborg theory critiques and challenges the adoption of gender and sexuality norms in contexts where they don't belong, such as in the design of technically impressive androids. For feminists and feminist cyborg theorists, in particular, cyborgs represent a future where gender, sex, and other social categories can be recombined, reconfigured, and ultimately lose their power to sort and divide people. Cyborg theory has been used to understand disability, race, body, space and place, economics, and the relationship between humans and non-human organisms, humans and technology, and many more aspects of modern life. It views humans and technology as potential companions and collaborators, not intrinsically antagonistic to each other, but to deliver on this promise of collaboration for freedom and flourishing for all. The social context of technology use has to be carefully considered from multiple perspectives in advance. Otherwise, harmful and oppressive social arrangements might be re-inscribed rather than overcome. So the core of this book is this concept of critical cyborg literacy. Critical cyborg literacy, as we define it, is a distinct point of view on the relationship between technology, culture, and society that draws on feminist scholarship about technology. It foregrounds power dynamics, specifically the ways in which social and cultural factors such as gender, race, and disability, as well as their intersections, shape the kinds of technologies that are imagined, developed, used, and resisted. It's both a critical approach and a creative expansion that seeks to tell alternative stories about technology as well as humans. So with that, we're going to turn to a section on cyborg bodies.
And so we're going to give you kind of previews of two sections from the book. And again, we go into more topics. We dive a little bit more into the theory and theory debates. This is your piece here. So cyborg bodies. Next slide. So while popular culture, this is my favorite cyborg, if you know me. While popular culture offers up images of cyborg bodies that exceed the capabilities of the human and subsume messy culture to technological solutionism, cyborgs that recall science fiction characters like Star Trek Voyager's board character 7-9, the real world experience of living as a cyborg is much more complex. In our book, we focus on two types of cyborg bodily being in this part of our discussion, specifically disability and gestation. So both modes of living raise important questions about how to live with technology, as well as how race, class, gender, nationality, and disability intersect, and how these intersections affect the role technology plays in everyday life. We foreground cyborg bodies in the material world, rather than imagined ones in fiction, to demonstrate how technological interventions for disability and gestation in particular can both constrain individuals' lives and open up new creative possibilities. Furthermore, we chose disability and gestation as our primary examples here because these modes of being are central to feminist knowledge, practices, and politics. And we are both feminist scholars. Bodies in general are central to feminist politics. Feminists have often taken the painful, hidden, and shameful experiences of bodies coded feminine or female as evidence of women's oppression. The more recent intersectional feminist paradigm expands feminist consciousness to be more inclusive of different kinds of bodies and more fully recognize the experience of women who are in the crosshairs of intersecting forms of oppression, not only gender oppression, of course, but racial, ethnic, national, class, caste, and others. So in this book, we use these two domains of experience to explore how technological interventions on the body can unsettle what we take for granted as the quote-unquote normal body. Viewing the body using critical cyborg literacy reveals that living intimately with technology, does not automatically mean a person is dependent on it for all things, as able-bodied people sometimes assume about disabled people who use assistive technologies. In cyborg living, technology provides both constraints and opportunities for new forms of autonomy and creativity. As feminists interested in improving how people live with technology, we are fascinated by such creative potential. Seeing technology as cyborg shapes how one might approach interpersonal interactions, shifts the politics and priorities of technological innovation in the United States, and supplies an anchor for transnational collective organizing. I'm going to talk a little bit about the gestation piece in particular. This is kind of one of the places that my research has taken me recently. So some classic examples of gestational technologies, the Del-M menstrual extractor, a plastic speculum, and an image of in vitro fertilization for those who might be fresh to these events. Gestation is the second domain, again, that we discussed in the book. Just like disability, technology can constrain due to the differential access to gestational technologies that individuals experience. But gestational technology, which we use to refer to technologies from preconception, like assisted reproductive technologies and testing, to birth, things like cesarean sections, also introduces a great deal of leeway for creativity, from creative kin-making to inspiring new political platforms. So cultural practices and attitudes towards gestational technology in North America have changed significantly during the 20th century. The first half of the century saw a rapid shift from home births attended by women relatives and midwives towards hospital births attended by doctors in white coats and their nurse assistants. While the pain relief and recovery time offered by a hospital birth was quite welcome, many women also felt a loss of autonomy, as interventions like anesthesia and post-delivery sterilization became standardized to different degrees or were sometimes used without informed consent. The 1970s then saw a revival of midwifery and home birthing that challenged the hegemony of male physicians in the institutional context of childbirth. This reaction posited that pregnancy and childbirth were quote unquote natural processes that in most cases merely needed to be endured and supported, not accelerated or altered. Feminists seeking to reclaim control over women's bodies encountered many obstacles, from a lack of formal scientific training to professional medicine's concerns about licensing, safety, and hygiene that criminalized some interventions that activists wanted to take. Today, a wide variety of attitudes coexist among North American gestating people and their caregivers, from an embrace of extensive prenatal and even pre-gestational testing to birthing interventions offered in prestigious teaching hospitals to pre-birth regimens with fewer tests and procedures offered by alternative providers like nurse midwives. So a cyborg perspective, coming back to our concerns here, casts another light on these debates about the place of technology and power in childbearing. A cyborg vantage point suggests that even ordinary technologies like the food we eat or the tools we use to gather and prepare it should be recognized as technological interventions on our bodies. Right, so two technologies also related to gestation that you might not think of as gestational technologies, a pot of brown rice and a map of AI kind of fine-tuned shipping container routes that delivers the rice to you. So from a cyborg, critical cyborg literacy perspective, again, quibbling about how much technological intervention ought to occur during gestation and birth is beside the point. So this stainless steel pot used to cook a bowl of organic brown rice eaten during pregnancy, and the AI optimized shipping container route that the grain traveled from the Indian subcontinent to the continental United States are just as technological as the reagents used in prenatal diagnostic testing or the pharmaceuticals administered in an epidural injection during birthing. A gestating person, however, probably feels like they have more control over what happens to their body when preparing food at home than a birthing person might feel over the interventions administered during a hospital-based birth. So the feminist cyborg position or politics of gestation are thus not so much about debating which one is more natural or not, but rather who controls the use of this expanded variety of gestational technologies. Next. So feminist theorist Sophie Lewis, who will be joining us in a future talk, we found out, makes this point quite forcefully in her study of Indian gestational surrogates who carry babies primarily for wealthy families. Lewis shows how gestational surrogacy is a relatively well-paying job for some poor Indian women, while also demonstrating how they lack meaningful consent and control over their bodies and lives at many points once the surrogate pregnancy begins. So in other words, it provides both financial independence to surrogates and their families, but also temporarily takes away bodily autonomy. Lewis frames these people's complicated relationship to gestation using the concept of gestational labor. Like working in a factory or white-collar office, framing gestation as labor highlights how limits to consent and bodily autonomy are characteristic of all waged work in capitalist societies. Rather than concede their autonomy to the forces of the market, the women Lewis profiles make efforts to better their working conditions through collective labor organizing and political action, okay, as based on their position as people who gestate for work, who gestate for money. In this case, then, recognizing the cyborg character of a gestating body's relationship to technology opens up a new pathway to political activism and political acknowledgement. Importantly, a cyborg view of a bodily state or process like gestation resists some radical feminist attempts to demonize gestational surrogacy and other birthing technologies on the grounds that some types of gestation, birthing, and by extension, family making are too technological to count. Next slide. A cyborg perspective, to put it another way, attunes feminist observers to the fact that even apparently low-tech supports for gestating bodies, like simple, healthful foods, are highly dependent on technology. All human bodies are interdependent with technologies, though some have a more necessary relationship than others. Sophie Lewis's idea of gestational labor, for example, is troubling to some readers because it upends the notion that human reproduction is a privileged activity that can be purified of technological intervention. For exactly that reason, it is a beautifully cyborg view of a necessary,